Well, I was born on a ranch house in Montana without electricity, and it was way out in the boonies, and my dad had to go get a midwife to come over and help with my mom. I don't remember any of that, by the way, but anyway, that's what happened. So I grew up on a ranch that we raised cattle and horses and pigs and chickens, and that was it. We didn't have sheep because cowmen don't like sheep, so so we didn't have sheep. But anyway, that's how I grew up, and we either walked to school or rode a horse to school. We had a barn at school, and we would take bales of hay there in a pickup truck, and then keep the horses there all day, and then we'd ride them home at night. So it was a very rural area, you know, but we didn't know we didn't have all those wonderful things that everybody else had. We didn't have electricity, so we had oil lamps, and we'd take a lantern down to the barn to milk the cows at night and in the morning. And you, by the way, you had to milk 2 cows before you went to school in the morning, which most kids today probably have a little problem with that. I worked in the ranch with my dad all the time. I was with him all the time. And my mother always had meals for us, and, you know, great meals. I mean, and the girls, my sisters, worked with her all the time, and it was just a great way to grow up. Both those poor kids today, they're raising themselves, and it's so sad to me that that is the case. I just love young people, or young guys especially. I mean, and then I get it really, you know, they go into the service, and then when they phone me back and, you know, ask me questions and stuff, and when they come home, I get a big hug from them, and so it's just really great to work with young people. I love it. I've got 3 brothers and 2 sisters. My oldest brother was, he and I had a really good relationship, and so probably my sister and I had an older sister was probably the best relationship because she took care of little Ray when he was born. And then I have good relationships with my first younger brother because he and I did some crazy things together. We made a car that was with a sidecar and a motorcycle. We made that and put 4 wheels on it, and that worked good. We tried an airplane, but that didn't work good at all. And there was a big log, I don't know where it came from, but a big log on about yay big around on our ranch. And so we thought we're going to make a canoe out of that. So we started digging into that with a hatchet, and we only got in about that far, and we got tired of it. We said, let's try that out. So we rolled it down to a lake in the spring, and we pushed it in, and we jumped on that thing, and it just rolled over, and we both, so our boat didn't work very good, and our airplane didn't work good, but our car worked pretty good, because we could push it. We were the engine for it. So that was my, you know, youth. When I graduated from high school, I had to put my name into the draft. My brother was also already in the service, getting shot at in Okinawa. In fact, he got hit a couple of times in the process of it. And so I was going to join the Army as soon as I got out of high school. But he said, you stay home and help Dad on the ranch. And so I did. And then right after Christmas that year, Uncle Sam sent me a letter. It says, it was a Dear John letter. Ray, your friends and neighbors have selected you. And I said, well, who were the ones that did that? Nobody ever told me. Anyway, rather than being drafted, I went up and enlisted in the Army Air Force. I said, well, I'd like to be an airplane mechanic. And that's, you know, I like engines and motors and stuff like that. And this blew my mind when the interviewer said, well, you got too high an IQ for that. You don't want to do that. Why don't you go into the weather service? I said, well, I don't know anything about it, but I'd go for it. I had probably had 12 weeks the first time just to be an operator. Then to be a technician, I had another, 26 weeks of training at Chanute Field, Illinois. Then I was transferred to California to work when I started working with Chuck Yeager. I got there before he did, by the way. Yeah. Those pilots like Chuck Yeager and Slick Goodwin, they were just crazy guys. They had to be, to fly that thing. There was one time Chuck Yeager was in a rodeo of some sort. He hurt his leg, and he didn't want to tell any of the officers, the people he was working with, except Ridley. When Ridley was one of the guys he really worked well with, he said, I can't use my right leg on the ailerons anymore. So you have to give me a stick of some sort. So he gave him a stick, and he used that on one of his trips. So, I mean, they had to be crazy guys. They're just wild, but they were young and they want excitement, and they got it.
Captain Charles Yeager climbs down into the cockpit of the rocket craft. Yeager, who has piloted the plane on all its record-breaking pace in the sky, drops clear. Because of security reasons, details of these flights have not been divulged.
If we're going to have military aircraft flying that speed, you want to know what's going to happen when you go through that barrier. And it was a rough time. It was vibration and all that was bad going through that. Because when he came down, it was a dead stick landing. In other words, he had no more fuel left when he came down. And yeah, it was a scary thing it could have been, I guess, for those guys, but they did it.
October 14th, 1947, Edwards Air Force Base, California. Captain Charles E. Yeager flew the experimental X-1 faster than the speed of sound in level flight. The first man in the world to accomplish this feat. The Air Force has contributed a storehouse of aerodynamic knowledge through this special series of flying laboratories, and also proved once again that it still takes manpower to pioneer and make possible advances in the aerospace age. The rocket-powered X-1 rode in a mothership to the altitude from which it began its run. This spectacular flight was one of the greatest achievements since the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk. Captain Yeager flew the X-1 faster than the speed of sound in level flight. The date, October 14th, 1947.
You know what? There was no celebration, and the main reason was that they didn't want this to get out into the public at all. For some reason, I don't remember the reason for it. We couldn't tell anybody that we had done that had happened. We probably went to the club and had a few beers, and that was it. The thing that really impressed me most about the Air Force was that at that time, when I was working in Muroc, California, we would have jets. There were a lot of experimental planes stationed there, and they would come over the runway, and they would about 200 feet high, and they would just throw the stick to the side and do 7 barrel rolls, and we're out of sight. That impressed me more than the sonic boom did. Once he broke the speed of sound, well, it wasn't fun anymore. So I asked for a transfer and ended up in Bermuda. I got married, Mary's mother then, before I went into the college. So I started out in electrical engineering. I thought that's what I wanted. Well, after the first year, I decided that's not what I want. So I changed to agricultural engineering and with a mechanical option. And because that's what I was most familiar with. I spent a lot of times on those old tractors, and I wanted to improve what they had, I could see where there were things that needed improvement. So I took a degree in ag engineering with a mechanical option. Before I even graduated, Uncle John Deere came to our campus in Montana State University and offered me a job. In fact, I got 6 other jobs, possibilities at that time, because it was right after the war and everybody was ramping up again. So I didn't want to be on that ranch the rest of my life. I wanted to, once I was in Bermuda, they say once you've been in Berlin, well, you never want to come back again. And so I just decided at that time, I wanted to make a difference in the world some way. And so God allowed me to do that by giving me a wonderful job with John Deere. Yeah. And then I took graduate work after I went to work for Deere. They really made it very easy for us. They would have professors from the University of Illinois come up to the Quad Cities to help us out, to teach us. So they were very, very helpful in that area. Before I got into the service, the only time I was out of Montana was into Canada. Canada was 24 miles north of where our ranch was. So we had been in Canada, but I'd never been out of the state of Montana before that. So here I saw the world, and I wanted to see more of it. And John Deere allowed me to do that. When I was 55 years old, I was the metric coordinator for the company. I was traveling to Europe and I was enjoying my job a lot. But they came up with a early out, and it was such a good job. I wasn't going to retire, but they gave me such a good deal that I couldn't refuse it. And so I did. I retired from Deere at 55 years old. Because I got my name on 8 patents included, so I'm helping farmers out today, because they're still using the same thing that I helped. And when I say I've got a patent on it, it's always a group of engineers. It isn't just Ray. It's a group of engineers have their name on a patent. But it's fascinating to be alive and watch that. I mean, I'm 95 years old, and can you imagine what it was like when we no electricity, no running water in a place in Montana, and look what we've got today.